Imagine a courtroom where the ghosts of history stand accused. Today, we delve into the tumultuous reign of a king who redefined power and love in the most dramatic and often brutal ways. Was Henry VIII the revolutionary leader forging a new nation? Or a self-serving tyrant who left a trail of broken hearts and shattered institutions? The evidence is presented, the arguments are made, and you, the jury, will decide.
Order. Order in the court. Today, we consider the case against Henry VIII, former King of England. The charges brought before this court allege a pattern of tyranny, religious upheaval, and the unjust treatment of his subjects, most notably his own spouses. Let the proceedings commence.
Your Honor, esteemed members of the viewers, we stand here today to expose Henry VIII for what he truly was, a monarch consumed by ego and desire, who manipulated law and religion to satisfy his personal whims, leaving a legacy of bloodshed and instability. The evidence will clearly demonstrate his guilt.
May it please the court, while the prosecution paints a picture of a monster, we will demonstrate that Henry VIII was a product of his time, a king who navigated complex political and religious landscapes to secure his dynasty and ultimately shaped the very fabric of modern England. His actions, while perhaps controversial, were often necessary for the survival of his kingdom.
The prosecution will first address the charge of tyranny. Henry VIII's reign was marked by the ruthless suppression of dissent. The Act of Supremacy, while establishing the Church of England, also consolidated immense power in the hands of the monarch, effectively making him both head of state and head of the church. This power was then used to silence and execute anyone who dared to oppose his will, from Sir Thomas More to countless monks and commoners. And let us not forget the fate of his wives. 2 were beheaded on flimsy charges, demonstrating a callous disregard for human life, especially that of women who could no longer serve his desires.
Objection, Your Honor. While the fate of his wives is indeed tragic, it must be viewed within the context of the paramount importance of royal succession in 16th century England. Henry's desperate desire for a male heir was not mere personal vanity. It was crucial for the stability of the kingdom and the prevention of civil war. His actions regarding his marriages were driven by this political imperative. Furthermore, the break with Rome was not solely about his personal life. The Pope's refusal to grant an annulment challenged the sovereignty of the English crown, a challenge Henry could not ignore if he were to be an effective ruler.
The argument of political necessity does not excuse the brutality with which Henry acted. He created his own laws and then used them to eliminate anyone who stood in his way. The dissolution of the monasteries, presented as a financial necessity, was also a blatant grab for power and wealth, leading to social unrest and the destruction of centuries of cultural and religious heritage. Objection, Your Honor. The defense attempts to justify tyranny under the guise of political pragmatism.
The defense may continue to provide context.
Thank you, Your Honor. While the dissolution of the monasteries had its complexities, it also played a crucial role in the English Reformation, paving the way for a distinct English identity and ultimately contributing to the development of a more modern state. Henry VIII's actions, though forceful, were instrumental in shifting the religious landscape of England, a shift that had profound and lasting consequences for the nation's future. He laid the groundwork for a Church of England that, while born out of personal and political necessity, ultimately became a defining feature of English society.
But at what cost? Henry VIII's religious reforms were hardly based on principles of tolerance. He persecuted Catholics who refused to acknowledge his supremacy and later turned on Protestants who deviated from his own narrowly defined doctrines. The executions of individuals like Anne Askew demonstrate that his religious policies were as much about control as about genuine reform. His actions led to further religious turmoil and instability in the years following his death.
Your Honor, the religious landscape of the 16th century was one of intense and often brutal conflict across Europe. While Henry's methods may seem harsh by today's standards, they were not entirely out of step with the practices of other European monarchs of the time. Furthermore, while the immediate aftermath of his reign saw further religious strife, Henry's establishment of the Church of England ultimately provided a foundation for a uniquely English form of Protestantism, which has had a lasting impact on global history. His legacy is not simply one of tyranny, but also of a nation forging its own path.
Let us return to the personal cruelty exhibited by Henry. The beheading of two queens, the relentless pursuit of an heir at the expense of countless lives and diplomatic stability. These are not the actions of a statesman acting solely in the nation's interest. They are the acts of a man driven by selfish desires and a dangerous sense of entitlement. The fear he instilled in his court and amongst his subjects speaks volumes about his tyrannical nature.
But consider the achievements of Henry VIII's reign. He strengthened the English navy, laying the foundation for Britain's future maritime power. He commissioned important works of art and architecture, contributing to the cultural landscape of the nation. He asserted the independence of the English crown from foreign interference, a move that had profound implications for England's sovereignty and its place in the world. These are not the actions of a purely selfish or destructive ruler.
Objection. These achievements, while notable, do not negate the fundamental injustices and cruelties of his reign. Many of these developments were driven by his personal ambitions and the need to project power, not by a genuine concern for the welfare of his people. The cost of his ambition, measured in lives and social upheaval, far outweighs any perceived benefits.
Objection sustained. The court acknowledges the prosecution's point regarding the human cost.
We acknowledge the complexities and controversies surrounding Henry VIII's reign. However, history rarely presents us with purely good or evil figures. Henry VIII was a man of contradictions, a king who could be both ruthless and visionary. His actions, while often driven by personal motives, had profound and lasting consequences for England, shaping its religious, political, and cultural identity in ways that continue to resonate today. To reduce him to a mere tyrant is to ignore the significant role he played in the making of modern England.
This court has heard compelling arguments from both sides. The prosecution has presented a case highlighting the alleged tyranny, the religious persecution, and the personal cruelty exhibited during Henry VIII's reign. The defense has countered by emphasizing the political and religious context of the time, arguing that his actions, while sometimes brutal, were often necessary for the stability and future of England. The evidence suggests a complex and contradictory figure, a monarch whose personal desires and ambitions were deeply intertwined with the fate of his nation. The question before you, the viewers, is whether the undeniable flaws and cruelties of Henry VIII's reign outweigh his historical significance and the lasting impact of his actions on England and the world.
So, was Henry VIII a criminal who abused his power, or a transformative figure who, despite his flaws, steered England towards a new destiny? The historical record offers ample evidence for both perspectives. Ultimately, the judgment rests with you. Consider the context, weigh the consequences, and decide for yourself the true legacy of King Henry VIII.